I could hear somebody come up from behind me, and they started rubbing my neck and touching me, and I turned around, and there was Merv in a pair of blue bikini underwear.
Everything was in Merv Griffin's hands. His brainchild is Jeopardy, as well as the fortune wheel. With his hotel empire, he amassed billions. He was adored by Hollywood. However, he was sued by two men in 1991. The first one alleged and the second one wanted $200 million in palimony. The harm had already been done, albeit both charges were later dropped. The speculation continued even after he passed away in 2007. Despite his success in building an empire, these charges established an indelible mark on his reputation. San Mateo is a peaceful, affluent neighborhood outside of San Francisco where Merv Griffin was born on July 6, 1925. Unfortunately, his family's wealth was short-lived. His family suffered a great loss when his father, a stockbroker, was wiped out by the Great Depression. Merv and his sister had to share a room when they moved into a little apartment. He carried that early sense of financial instability throughout his life. From a young age, he was aware of how fleeting life was, even though he would go on to make game shows that would earn billions. Among his peers, Merv was unpopular. As a youngster, he weighed around 240 pounds and was quite reserved. It was like he never belonged there. But he has a gift that the majority of children lacked. While waiting for confession, a priest overheard him humming beautifully at the little age of 7. The next year, he became a member of the choir. His feet barely touched the pedals as he played Bach on the church organ by 10. He started making $35 per week, equivalent to around $650 in today's dollars, as the official organist by the time he was 15 years old. He never had a piano lesson, but he practiced every day for hours, sometimes until his fingers bled. His ear was finely tuned, and he learnt music by ear. Equally ambitious was Merv. When he was a college student, he decided to join ROTC and shed 25 pounds to be in military shape. Although he was 18 years old when he was inducted into the military in 1944, Merv was not one of the 39% of his class to go overseas due to a heart murmur. Feeling bad about it, he did what he could, performing in 127 USO events in 2 years, entertaining injured soldiers at hospitals in California. Merv had no competition in the entertainment industry while others were overseas due to his missed draft, and he made good use of that advantage. Fans were taken aback by his appearance immediately following his 1944 debut on national radio. He was still somewhat plump despite his lovely voice. With a strong will to make a difference, Merv lost 80 pounds in under 4 months. Black coffee, a single meal each day, and smokes made up his savage diet. This time, though, it was successful. After hearing him on the radio, famed bandleader Freddie Martin offered Merv a job at $250 per week, 4 times his previous salary. Merv and Martin's orchestra went on a 47-state tour the next 4 years. Man, he mastered the art of commanding attention. He would play night after night for famous people like Frank Sinatra at New York's Roosevelt Hotel. Their most popular single, the Trolley Song, peaked at number 18 on the Billboard Hot 100, and they collaborated on 32 other tracks. They ended up arguing over royalties. Instead of taking a risk on himself, Merv left his $400 weekly paycheck. That bet was successful. One of the glitziest nightclubs in Los Angeles, the Coconut Grove, was opened to Merv on November 12, 1948. He exaggerated his fame and said Sinatra had suggested him to San Francisco. The claims were all false. The audience went wild as he sang a ridiculous British novelty song called "I've Got a Lovely Bunch of Coconuts" during his 15-minute opening slot. He was then summoned back for 3 encores. 2 days after that performance, he signed with RCA Victor and began a 6-week stint paying $850 per week. Additionally, 3.4 million copies of the song were sold. Merv remembered the song that began it all, so decades later he created an homage nightclub inside his hotel and called it the Coconut Club. But this wasn't even before Merv launched his record label. With the age of 19, he established Panda Records. The debut album in the United States to be recorded on magnetic tape was Songs by Merv Griffin, 1946, his debut release. That was more than a footnote. It revolutionized the recording industry. Merv had complete creative control over the recording process, in contrast to other performers who had little to no input. Merv quickly proved he wasn't just a one-hit wonder, even after The Coconuts catapulted him to fame. Wilhelmina, his subsequent single, was a light-hearted number that garnered an Academy Award nomination. His subsequent singles Music and Never Been Kissed were also tremendous successes. His ability to sing, act, and captivate an audience was demonstrated through these songs, which pushed him towards cinema roles. Doris Day was instrumental in his breakthrough to the Hollywood scene. She arranged for him to have a screen test at Warner Brothers after being so enchanted by his performance at a nightclub. She had her heart set on another job for him, but he ended up with a contract instead. Thanks to that arrangement, I was able to land roles in other films. For many years, Merv and Doris remained close friends. She made many appearances on his talk program, and he always acknowledged her for launching his film career. He made his big screen debut in the 1953 film The Toast of New Orleans, in which he kissed Katherine Grayson. It seemed complicated back then, but now it all sounds easy. The passionate kiss was forbidden by the rigid Hollywood regulations of the day because it was open-mouthed. It was an affront to the Hays Code, which forbade anything deemed. Even if it wasn't his intention, Merv did spark a revolution at that very moment. Hollywood was that much closer to releasing itself from its censorship regulations after that kiss. However, Merv Griffin secretly despised the tedious process of filmmaking. He was not the kind to wait around for hours for a badly cast role where he would only have 2 lines to say. Power was what he sought. Advice was what he sought. Above all else, he yearned for independence. He then took a daring step by walking away from Hollywood after buying out his contract with Warner Brothers. Everything was altered by what followed. The realm of television was Griffin's first port of call. His latest game show, Play Your Hunch, premiered in 1958. It began airing on CBS, moved to ABC in the beginning of 1959, and has since settled into a long-term home on NBC. It was quite unusual to do a run using 3 networks. Following your gut and selecting the correct response was the only requirement of the format. A young Robert Redford and future news anchor Ted Koppel were among the guests. But behind the scenes, it was really beginning their careers. On 2 occasions, broadcaster Johnny Olson substituted in for Griffin, giving him his debut there. Although Griffin was quickly becoming popular, not everyone shared his enthusiasm. Robert Q. Lewis, another host, and he had a long-running feud. According to Griffin, Old Foyle didn't have what the public wanted. This was in reference to Lewis taking over the program at a later date. I did. ABC recognized an opportunity to feature him in prime time as his popularity skyrocketed. The reins of Keep Talking were passed to him in 1959. The show's premise was ingenious. While one teammate made up a tale without really stating it, the celebrity panelists tried to guess what it was. The story had to keep moving without a hitch since the narrator cut abruptly between the panelists. With A-listers like Joey Bishop, Orson Bean, and Jane Meadows at his side, Griffin breezed through it all. Even though the show ended in 1960, Griffin had already shown that he could dominate prime time. By 1963, NBC had once again taken notice of Griffin's abilities. Producer rights were the larger offer this time. This program, Word for Word, was the first example of Griffin's impact behind the scenes. Despite positive reviews, His debut daytime talk program was canceled by NBC a few months ago. But Griffin was a master negotiator. He was able to maintain his position as a producer thanks to his contract. He was able to develop two of the most famous game shows of all time. Jeopardy! Thanks to the experience he gained from that tiny clause, which led to his next chapter, as well as the Fortune Wheel. The talk programs were still a constant for Griffin. Actually, it was an accident that gave him his big break. Play Your Hunch was being filmed one morning when Jack Paar, host of The Tonight Show, accidentally walked onto the set. Griffin took advantage of the situation instead of freaking out and questioned Paar immediately. He was invited to be Parr's guest host because of such spontaneous action. Griffin became NBC's most successful fill-in host during the changeover from Parr's departure to Johnny Carson's arrival. Even though he wasn't chosen as the permanent successor, he was given his very own daytime talk program. Its debut was on October 1, 1962, the same day that Carson made her debut. Griffin wasn't finished, even though his program only lasted 6 months initially. By syndication, it returned in 1965 via Westinghouse Broadcasting, allowing local stations the option to show a 60 or 90-minute version at any time of day or night. Arthur Treacher, who played a supporting role, won over viewers and introduced Griffin with flair. And now, here, we have the dear boy himself, Merv Griffin. CBS saw the show's potential and offered Griffin a late-night position in 1969, pitting him against Carson. Griffin was a national sensation for 3 years while he competed on network television, drawing attention to himself with his insightful interview technique and daring guest selections. However, debate ensued. To take a stand against the Vietnam War in 1965, Griffin dared philosopher Bertrand Russell to join him in his refusal to play it safe. Newspapers immediately began labeling him a traitor, but he refused to back down. He was open to controversial but influential figures like Abbie Hoffman, Norman Mailer, George Carlin, and Dick Gregory. Comedian Phyllis Diller and Pearl Harbor attack mastermind Captain Mitsuo Fuchida were put together on an episode of Griffin's show. It was genuine but hazardous. The CBS brass began to feel uneasy in 1969. Griffin was coerced into airing more pro-war speakers by them. His refusal was clear. Censors masked Hoffman's image when he sported an American flag T-shirt. Griffin characterized it as a disorganized mess of lines. Moreover, they insisted that he dismiss Treacher on the grounds that he was too elderly. He resisted. Griffin was never given a fair chance to unseat Carson, even if he defeated The Joey Bishop Show. CBS had less affiliate stations. He went back to syndication in 1972 after becoming tired of meddling. That decision freed him from corporate control, allowing the program to continue for an additional 14 years. Notable was Griffin's manner of questioning. Griffin leaned in, literally, while Carson remained icy and aloof. He was kind, concerned, attentive, and eager for his visitors to appear well. He allowed discussions to go on for 30 minutes or more, rather than brief advertising interactions. He spoke with more than 25,000 people throughout the years. Orson Welles, who made an appearance approximately 50 times, was his favorite. Even visitors without anything to sell, like Eva Gabor, who came on simply to speak, were welcomed by Griffin, who created living room-style talks instead of showbiz showcases by giving them complete episodes. Not only was the show well received by viewers, but it also won several Emmys. It received 4 further nominations and 1 for Outstanding Directing in 1985. The score, composed by Mort Lindsay, received nominations in 1970 and 1971 consecutively. It was 1971 when Griffin received his own Golden Globe nomination for Best Actor in a Musical or Comedy for his work on television. He was honored with an induction into the Television Hall of Fame in 2008, exactly 1 year after he passed away. When Merv and Julan were returning to New York in 1963, TV executives were still reeling from the quiz show scandals of the 1950s, which had turned them against trivia shows. What if, instead of asking people to guess the questions, you just handed them the answers? That was Julan's wacky concept. In the cabin, she put her theory to the test. She revealed the exact number. 5,888. How many feet in a mile? Merv asked in response. One of the most memorable television series of all time had its beginnings with just one spark. I Was on Jeopardy! By March 30th, 1964. First episode had gone broadcast. The show's host, Art Fleming, was brilliant, and it had a more sophisticated vibe than any other daytime TV program. However, Jeopardy! Was impacted by something else. Evergreen, the tune that plays at the entrance, Think, was a song that Griffin had composed. Written in less than a minute to serenade his son to sleep. He made nearly $100 million in royalties from the 30-second track. It was one of the most lucrative jingles ever created. However, Griffin refused to rest. At about the same time, he had another brilliant idea, the simple yet captivating game of Hangman, inspired by his sister's pastimes when they were kids. He then presented the idea to NBC, combining it with his interest in roulette wheels. Lynn Bolan, an executive there, claimed that in order to entice female viewers, it required more glitz. With the addition of shopping, they made a peculiar prototype with a vertical wheel and rotary phones named Shopper's Bazaar. Eventually, they opted on a refined version. The official debut of Wheel of Fortune was January 6, 1975. It surpassed all previous syndicated game shows in terms of duration. Griffin expanded his little production firm into a massive game show empire by the mid-1980s. As the largest sale of an entertainment firm controlled by a single individual at the time, the $250 million sale of Merv Griffin Enterprises to Columbia Pictures in 1986 stunned Hollywood. Griffin achieved Hollywood stardom and wealth, but he struck a bargain that most inventors can only dream of. He retained ownership of the rights to continuous earnings. Remittances continued to arrive even following the sale. Novel spin-offs such as Wheel 2000 and Jeopardy! Play Rock and Roll Jeopardy! And Sports Edition were continuing to implement his first concepts. There were several shows that bombed. Griffin gambled. He made the animated mailroom sitcom Let's Play Post Office in 1965 for NBC. Prizes varied from $5 to $100, and participants had to solve riddles based on puns. The temperature is 0. I must tell you was one of the clues. The solution was Zero Mostel, and it didn't last more than a year. Reach for the Stars, which he introduced 2 years later and featured Herb Alpert's music on, had a brief 65-episode run. Even though they were brief, his concerts demonstrated that he was continually trying new things, which didn't slow him down. Griffin was creating more than simply entertainment. He was constructing an empire. He grabbed his $250 million windfall in 1986 and shot for the stars. He paid $100.2 million in December 1987 to acquire the Beverly Hilton Hotel. A $35 million makeover has recently taken place. The Beverly Hills Hotel had been reserved for the Sultan of Brunei, so it wasn't his original preference. The Beverly Hilton, however, was not without its past. It played home to presidents, Hollywood stars, and other notable figures. The Golden Globes and other Hollywood celebrations moved there when Griffin was owner. The hotel had lost its luster, according to critics, but with Griffin's Hollywood magic, it became an institution once more. After that, Resorts International arrived as his most daring venture. Griffin put up a fight when Donald Trump attempted to seize power. It was a lengthy and complicated arrangement. After spending $365 million, taking on $925 million in debt, and paying Trump an additional $60 million to just walk away, Griffin finally made his move. He received the Paradise Island Resort and hotels in Atlantic City, while Trump retained ownership of the Taj Mahal Casino. Griffin declared triumph, but the jubilation was short-lived. The majority of his borrowings were in trash bonds, which had an interest rate of roughly 14%. Resorts International experienced a $70 million shortfall in cash flow during the first year. A Chapter 11 bankruptcy was filed by the firm in December 1989. Even though Griffin's empire had crumbled a year after defeating Trump, he continued to dream big. His revival of the Coconut Club in January 1998 was a throwback to classic Hollywood. On weekends, the Beverly Hilton was turned into a beautiful nightclub, with velvet booths, a huge dance floor, gilded palm trees, and trumpeter Jack Sheldon playing big band music. Before becoming the owner, Griffin was a performer at similar venues when he was younger. It was more than simply reminiscence. The Coconut Club was an ode to his youth. Merv Griffin was thriving in the 1950s television limelight. His acting resume was expanding, and he was charming and ambitious. He encountered Julianne Wright at that moment. She had a secretarial job on the set of the Robert Q. Lewis program. Although their encounter began as a routine one, it quickly evolved into something more significant. When Griffin's career was just starting to take off, they tied the knot in 1958. No one could have predicted that this pair would go on to influence the development of Jeopardy! A television classic. In a private setting, Julianne contributed to the ideation process. Despite her relative obscurity, her advice was crucial in the development of his enterprise. Tony, their son, was born in 1959. Their marriage remained strong for 18 years, but as Merv's reputation skyrocketed, they became increasingly distant. There was little drama surrounding their 1976 divorce. Rather, it was a calm separation at what Griffin described as an unstable period in their marriage. Their bond persisted even after they broke up. Julianne established the first Women's Bank of California and continued her career in stand-up comedy, each of which contributed to her personal legacy. Their amicable breakup was a departure from the norm for Hollywood couples. At the height of his success, Merv became a father on December 8, 1959, when Tony was born. After that, the public began to perceive the game show tycoon in a more sympathetic light. Despite his best efforts, Tony was born and raised amidst the mayhem of the entertainment industry. Later in life, he established a vineyard in Malibu and appeared in films such as Spaceballs. After Merv passed away in August 2007, Tony delivered a moving eulogy. Tony gave the most personal glimpse, though Arnold Schwarzenegger did speak at the burial as well. The 82-year-old Merv nevertheless had the vitality of a younger man, so much so that he was nicknamed the Energizer Bunny by his son. Farrah, Tony's 12-year-old daughter, performed a reading during the touching ceremony, and his son Donovan was appointed honorary pallbearer. Through thick and thin, the Griffin family persevered. Gabor by his side, Merv was a sight to behold in the 80s. They appeared in many photos together at red carpet events, galas, and parties. The media simply couldn't get enough of them. Everyone was wondering whether they were actually dating, if they were planning to tie the knot, and if Nancy Reagan would be the matron of honor. By saying, "We are not romantically involved," Gabor ended the whole thing in 1990. They remained unbreakable nonetheless. Although they had crossed paths years before, their friendship was solidified during production of Return to Green Acres. Hollywood insiders said the partnership had a dual purpose. It shielded Merv from inquiries about his private life while also providing him with real friendship. Tragically, Merv lost his wife Eva in July 1995. He was like family to her sister, Jaja. Whatever it was that bound them together, it persisted right up to the end. Litigation ensued. After living with Merv Griffin since 1981, a guy called Brent Plott startled Hollywood on April 11, 1991, by suing him, claiming to have been Griffin's lover and companion for 9 years. For reasons beyond financial gain, he introduced himself as Griffin's lover, confidant, secretary, driver, and advisor. Asserting that Griffin had assured him of half of everything, including Jeopardy funds, he sought $200 million, as well as the fortune wheel. He went so far as to claim that he was involved in the creation of Wheel, and that he had selected Vanna White to work on the lettering. Plott increased his first request from $400,000 to $200 million. He claimed he relocated to Los Angeles just for Griffin, abandoning a career in antiques in the process. It was a riveting tale. The response from Merv was prompt and unhesitating. He said that none of it was true, and that Plott was only a $250 a week horse trainer and bodyguard who had never been his companion. While Merv's lawyer portrayed the case as an effort to extort money, Merv himself portrayed the allegations as ridiculous. Despite denials from Plott's attorney, Griffin claimed that Plott had failed a lie detector test. The case was abruptly dropped in November 1991. Griffin's camp refused to comment on the reason behind the dismissal, which led to more speculation. A month down the road, still another surprise. D, the former presenter of Dance Fever, Taro, sued Griffin for... There were explicit details. In Taro's words, it all started before the broadcast ever went live. He said Griffin groped him, unsnapped his trousers, and pushed him onto a couch. He detailed years of physical contact, kissing, and secret changing room trips as forms of harassment. In addition, he said that Griffin had utilized the pledges of ownership of the program and a portion of the earnings as leverage over him. It wasn't until 1991 that Taro finally spoke up. In his 1992 appearance on the Geraldo Rivera Show, he gave a detailed account of everything. Rivera probed him extensively, casting doubt on his claim and bringing up allegations of drug use in the past, among other things, including why he waited so long. An uncomfortable chuckle escaped the listener's lips. Griffin's crew was challenged by Taro's lawyer to replicate the stunt by waving the polygraph results on television, implying that their client had successfully passed a polygraph exam. Once again, the lawsuit was dismissed before it ever reached trial. The ending's relative quiet, however, prompted speculation, much like the Plott lawsuit. A few people started to question if Griffin had bought their silence. By the early 2000s, his net wealth had surpassed $1 billion. Perhaps it was simpler to make difficulties disappear at that point. Whatever the case may be, those cases altered the course of events. The information were published in newspapers, broadcasted on TV, and whispered throughout the business, although Merv never acknowledged to anything. One of the most famous faces in television was involved, and they occurred decades before Hollywood started really addressing power abuse. "He blacklisted me," Taro remarked afterwards. "I lived out every nightmare." A number of my colleagues in the field expressed similar concerns about the ease with which an influential person may stifle dissent, even in the absence of a successful legal challenge. Though he had a very prominent life in the United States, Merv Griffin kept a lot of his true identity under wraps. Hollywood insiders developed a code phrase for referring to someone as gay in the early 2000s. People referred to Merv as a confirmed bachelor, or just brought up the fact that his marriage to Julianne Wright had terminated in 1976. Not even his closest associates dared to inquire more. No one ever mentioned anything, even though everyone knew. As far as observing the rule was concerned, Merv was among the best. He went over and above by fabricating an entire persona in order to hide the facts. His close relationship with Eva Gabor, which was well publicized, was a powerful component of this picture. They were often photographed together, attended events together, and even discussed marriage. It appeared to be a love story to those on the outside, but those on the inside knew it was more than that. This type of connection was called a beard in Hollywood. It was a cover tale, and it worked. Merv did a good job with his role. He kept his cool and even cracked a joke when someone probed him directly about his private life. "I tell everybody that I'm a quatrisexual. I will do anything with anybody for a quarter," he told the New York Times in 2005. That one-liner conveyed more than it revealed. Laughing it off, he could divert attention away from the stories and keep everyone in the dark. In 1991, however, his world came crashing down when two men, a former employee and a TV host, launched lawsuits against him. The first one was a palimony claim seeking $200 million, while the second one was an accusation of seeking $11.3 million. There was a lot of media attention due to these large figures. Still, Merv showed no signs of concern. He increased his attendance at Gabor-related activities, acting as if nothing had changed. Both claims were eventually dismissed, and the article disappeared without a trace. Things were different, though, when no one was around. The male companions that Merv had lived with were known to the Hollywood elite. Some said he was romantically involved with famous people, including Peter Lawford, James Dean, and Rock Hudson. According to one of his biographers, Merv even employed someone to bring him adult film stars and maintained a veritable harem of males. Though they may not have witnessed it directly, his staff grasped the reality. Silence was the only response. Merv gave Rolling Stone one of his final major interviews in 2006 as his health was deteriorating. Directly addressing his sexuality, the journalist questioned him. Merv remained silent on the matter, failing to affirm or refute it. "At this very now, you are inquiring about a man's sexuality from the age of 80? Go get a life," he joked. Another joke. And it was successful once more. According to the interviewer, Merv didn't respond with a yes or no. Instead, he shifted the conversation back to Eva Gabor and the question of safety. Los Angeles' Cedars-Sinai Medical Center was the site of Merv Griffin's death on August 12, 2007. His age was 82. The prostate cancer that he had successfully battled in 1996 had returned. A deluge of tributes arrived as soon as the news hit. His funeral was placed in Beverly Hills' Church of the Good Shepherd 5 days after he passed away. In addition to Merv's son Tony, eulogy was delivered by Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger, who was accompanied by Nancy Reagan in the front row. It was a farewell party for the famous, including Vanna White, Pat Sajak, Alex Trebek, Ellen DeGeneres, Ryan Seacrest, and Dick Van Dyke. Westwood Village Memorial Park was the site of Merv Griffin's burial. A final joke was carved into his gravestone that read, "I will not be right back after this message." In honor of him, the Game Show Network aired weekend marathons of his shows, drawing in millions of viewers. They recalled his legacy, which included his creations, as well as the joy, rewards, and spinning wheels.